Let's try challenge another 5-minute video. Let's keep it brief. This is Rabbi Kolakowski, the Kiblenzer Rav, and I want to talk a little bit about the controversy that's going on right now in New York State about the education in the Hasidic schools. This is my approach to it. Again, I'm a Republican with libertarian leanings. You know, I believe very much in live and let live. You do your thing, let us do our thing. We leave each other alone. And mind your business. That was one of the early mottos of this country, of the United States of America. And I'm a very proud American. You know, the Hasidic and ultra-Orthodox communities, and that's included in the ultra-Orthodox communities, Hasidic and other ultra-Orthodox communities, not all are Hasidic, we are proud Americans. We're not Zionists. We're either non-Zionists or anti-Zionists in our community. We're patriotic, proud Americans who support our constitutional way of life with the First Amendment first and foremost. And I've said that before. I was quoted on Fox News in an article online saying this, that I see the Hasidic community is like the canary in the coal mine of religious freedom. And whatever is affecting my community will eventually set precedent for others. And the left is out to try to destroy religious freedom in America. You see that with the whole story with the baking cakes issue, which thankfully was won in the Supreme Court in the proper way. But essentially making these people violate their religion. How's that different than forcing a kosher bakery to make a bacon cheeseburger on Passover, or a halal restaurant to serve pork? It's unconscionable that something like that could happen in America, and we're thankful that the Supreme Court ruled in the proper way there a couple of years ago with that story with the cakes, with the wedding cakes. There's another Supreme Court case called Yoder versus the state of Wisconsin, which was on behalf of the Amish community, that a similar attack was made against the Amish community. Their children only have schooling for a certain number of years, also in the private school or homeschool, and then they go to work. And it's the same, and the same thing. They're taught a different language. They're raised speaking the Pennsylvania Dutch dialect, which is a dialect of German, very similar to our Yiddish, that our children are raised speaking in our communities, many of them. And the Supreme Court found in favor of the Amish, and the same thing is here. The same ruling applies here. New York State has no right to impose a different style and claim truancy against the Hasidic community for offering a different style of education in a different culture than what's being offered in the public schools. The definition of substantial equivalence was never defined, and it doesn't need to be defined. It was intentionally ambiguous for that reason, and I would argue, as someone who believes in my faith very strongly, and someone who attended public school and has seen how the public schools have gotten worse thanks to the Democrats, and what kind of hellholes they are. Every private school of every religion, Christian, Jewish, Muslim, even the most cloistered, is not only, and no matter what they're teaching, they're not only substantially equivalent, but substantially superior. And it particularly is so with the Orthodox Jewish community. Do you know what Talmud study is like? Do you understand what's in there? It's not just reading Psalms, which we do that too. But Talmud study, it's an intense intellectual debate with the Socratic method of learning, and it includes language arts, history, science, mathematics. It's all in there. The curriculum that's in the Talmud, it's all in there. And so what's in the Talmud is college level stuff, and our kids are able to do it because they don't waste time. I was in public school. I saw what goes on in public school. How many times they had us watch Cool Runnings or Aladdin or The Lion King because the teachers were too lazy to teach. Give me a break. substantially equivalent. And it's much worse now when they're pushing things down the kids' throats. Communist ideology, that there's no such thing as boys and girls. Give me a break. You know why the kids are so misbehaved in the public schools? Because they're teaching them that they come from monkeys, and that's where it comes from. Rabbi Kamenetsky was a very famous rabbi. He lived many years in Rockland County and many years in Brooklyn, and he was on a plane with one of the secular Zionist founders of Israel, one of those Marxists in Israel that I mentioned. We have nothing to do with them. And this commie Zionist guy, he said, why does your grandson respect you so much? My grandchildren want nothing to do with me or my ideology. And he says, very simple. You teach your kids they come from monkeys, so they see you as 2 generations closer to the monkeys. Or I understand it's common ancestors with the monkeys. And we believe, and my grandchildren see me as 2 generations closer to the generation that stood with Moses at Mount Sinai, where they all heard God say, I am the Lord your God, who took you out of the land of Egypt from the house of slavery. 2 generations closer to Adam, who was formed by God himself, by the very handiwork of God. That's the difference. And that's why the public schools are so garbage. In the old days, when my grandmother went to public school, and even if they had to say Christian prayers, they said the Lord's Prayer. There's nothing wrong with that as far as I'm concerned. I mean, we don't do it in our community, but I'm saying to pray, to not be led into temptation, and to recognize that God's the one who's giving you your daily bread and all this, and to ask for forgiveness and state your forgiveness against to others. That's a beautiful thing. What's wrong with that? That's how things were in the old days. When my grandmother, a Jewish woman, and when she went to public school, boys and girls were separate. That's how it was in the old days. And you didn't have these school shootings. You didn't have what you have in Long Island, where I grew up, that kids beating up other kids and videotaping it instead of helping them, and the kid dies. That's what goes on in the public schools that Lori Santori teaches at. It's a substantial equivalent. That's a substantial equivalency. Thank you for watching. God bless. Please like and share and subscribe. I went over the 5 minutes. I hope you'll forgive me.